Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, where all voices matter. With the ballots counted and the Alberta election results known, it's time to look ahead to what this means for Alberta and Canada. Here to join me is Josh Andrus. He's the Executive Director of Project Confederation, advocating for a better deal for the West. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
So I guess, take it right from the top. What did you make about the results from this election?
Well, I think it sends Alberta Premier Danielle Smith to Edmonton, which is the capital of Alberta, with a very clear mandate to stand up to the federal government on some of their more ambitious climate policies, namely the net zero electricity grid by 2035. Alberta and Western Canada in general have a our electricity grid is very heavily reliant on natural gas for our power. So to move entirely away from that, it's going to be incredibly costly, as well as their emissions cap on the oil sands at the end of this year. That's just because technology is not there as a de facto production cut. It makes it impossible for our primary industry to grow and to innovate internally. So these are the two big issues that came to the table. Obviously, what is coming is going to be essential for the future of for the province of Alberta. If the federal government brings in what they're calling now the Sustainable Jobs Plan, but is in effect a just transition to effectively transition our energy workers into lower paying green energy jobs, or just onto the unemployment line altogether in this for the sake of their climate ambitions, it's going to be absolutely devastating. So the election of Danielle Smith sends a clear message to the federal government that if Alberta is under attack, that we will use whatever tools are available to us to defend our interests in the national arena.
Let's talk about the campaign a little bit, because some of our viewers may not be up on exactly, they know maybe what the result was, but they weren't following the ebb and flow of the campaign. So were those issues that were discussed, Danielle Smith's policies on those issues and the UCP's policies versus the NDP and Rachel Notley, those were topics of conversation?
Well, maybe not amongst the mainstream media, who were really trying to focus on some of the NDP's more low blow attacks on Danielle Smith and the UCP. There was a lot of noise this campaign, a lot of controversy stirred up by the NDP and the mainstream media, but amongst the average everyday voter, most people in Alberta know that affordability, which was a key election platform of both parties, is driven in many ways by energy policy. If we can produce affordable, reliable energy products at an affordable price, it does keep costs down at every level of the production cycle, from putting the seeds in the ground to getting the bread on the table. So it's one of those things where it was very much a feature of the campaign. There was a lot of noise on some controversies that we don't necessarily need to get into here. But at the end of the day, affordability was a key issue, and energy policy is very much tied to that.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I don't want to get into the extraneous the issues that dog every campaign, I think, at this point. But I think I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing from what you're saying is the average voter was able to draw a line between his or her food costs, housing costs, cost of living, and having a robust natural resources sector that didn't have an overburden of taxation and regulation on it. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it is the demographic there. Most people are either descended from or are farmers or ranchers and that type of industry. And then obviously our primary industry is in fact oil and natural gas. So these are our two primary industries. Both of them are natural resource industries, and people do just in general have a good understanding of economics here, of your basic economic supply and demand, right? So economics is a driving force behind most of our elections. It's a big reason why we vote the way we do, even federally. And I definitely do think that most people, just because of the way our province is structured economically, are more in tune with energy policy as it pertains to inflation and affordability.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so ultimately the result was a referendum on that, and the voters were able to get away from some of the incidental personality issues that the media tries to flog day in, day out, and talk about their own self-interest and their own survivability in this kind of economic climate. We're going to be back with our guest, Josh Andrus, after this break. Please stay with us.